Darling, we've had one hell of a time, but the question on everybody's mind, where is the
Hello and welcome to Ideas Don't Bleed, a comics podcast presented by Ashcan Press and featuring Matthew Rosenberg and the Supple Boiz, Ethan S. Parker, and Griffin Sheridan. This is part 2 of our discussion with TINI HOWARD. We hope you enjoy.
Well, let's talk about the new book. Let's talk about PHENOMENOCITY, which you can read on your Substack right now, the first 2 chapters.
And it's free. You just have to sign up. There's other stuff that costs money to read, but if you just want to read the comic, we don't charge people for that. When other chapters come out, it's 2 weeks for just the paid people, but then it's free for everyone. So, and
everyone should read it because it's awesome, weird, beautiful, smart, grounded sci-fi. It's small, intimate sci-fi, and like, first of all, do you want to give the pitch for what the book is? If you
yeah, it's me and Phil Seavey, who I've actually been working with since I was at Top Cow. So it's like one of my first projects in comics, and we became good friends. And we're very close friends now. And so I wanted to do this book with him really badly, because I knew I wanted it to be about an intimate relationship in a city and a mysterious phenomenon. And Phil draws all of those things really, really well.
He does.
But yeah, it's a woman named Amelia Hurt who goes to mysterious city to find out about the death of her friend. The city is it's in the world we live in today, sort of theoretically, but mysterious environmental phenomenon pops up over this mountain in Canada, and it doesn't respond, it doesn't do anything, it's just there. So people kind of move under it to study it and worship it and whatever, and it doesn't change, it's just there. So people build up around it, and the whole society builds up around it. So the book is kind of both about the mystery of Amelia trying to find her dead friend, who was her like internet bestie back in the day. They'd never met in person, but she found out she's dead, and her exploration of this city under this phenomenon, people that live there.
Awesome. The I like when I read it, I sort of, not to do like an exploration of your influences, but like,
no, I love the show. Yeah.
I feel like you see a lot of like, there's a lot of Grant Morrison in there. There's a lot of, it feels like Harlan Ellison stuff. It feels like, there's notes of Arrival, if you want to talk about that. And it's interesting because it's all stuff I love, but like, again, not how my brain works. And for me, getting into the book, like, you start with the phenomenon. You start talking about the phenomenon, and these things appear. And I was so drawn into that, and I loved it so much. And then it just swerves to be about this woman. And I was like, I had 2 thoughts. One, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see how these things come together. But the other is, man, did TINI take 2 good book ideas and waste them by putting them in the same book when she could have had 2 cool books?
I can't do that though. Like, I have to layer things. Like, I've learned that about me. Like, I can't, my ideas like that's kind of how they work. Cause like, I'll have 2 of them floating around, or I'll have like a miasma of like 6 of them floating around in my head. And I'm like, all of these feel like gestational.
Yeah.
Like, none of them feel real. And then like one day 2 of them bump into each other about something and I'm like, it's like the personal story and the larger story. And like, to me, part of the, like, okay, one thing I love horror movies. This is widely known about me. And one of my favorite things about the horror genre is that your movie can be a really, really simple concept. Like, there's a monster in the basement, but you can take 90 minutes to 2 hours telling that story, right? And it's just like, a family moves in and the daughter goes to ballet and here's voice or whatever. Like, you just make shit up. And then like, the reveal is there's a monster in the basement. But that's really the whole plot. And it's just how they get there. So for me, I really, really love looking at these 2 narratives that I have and figuring out where they touch, and then working backwards and then starting to tell them as though they're disparate stories, and kind of seeing, and like, as we go along, like, you see how they are related and how they touch each other. But like, that feeling of, what the fuck? How are these related? Like, that's part of the tension I'm trying to build to keep you in, you know?
Yeah. And I what I love about it for me personally is like they feel so disparate and they feel so separate, but both of them are great paths into the story, because one is the phenomenon is this amazing world building of just like intriguing, fascinating stuff, and then you have Amelia's story, which is very personal, and you get to know her, and like you almost forget that the other exists until they start to bump into each other, and then you're just like, oh, you have this great path of character that feels really organic, and this great path to world building that feels organic, and then when they start to come together, everything blows up in this really fun way where, like, I don't know, the thing that really shocked me about it, I was like, okay, when I started reading it, I was like, okay, I understand what the world is. It's basically the present day. And then there's all these like, no, it's a little different than the present day. It's a little futuristic. And the more it goes, it just unwraps in this way that's so smart, where like you're not forcing it on anybody, that you're guiding them through it, and it just means that every page turn, or since you read it on Substack, every swipe, sort of peels back what you know more, and you're never left with a good footing, but you're so immersed in it. It's so sharp and smart.
Thank you. No, I love doing stuff like that. I love things that do that intelligently. I watch a lot of TV. I love TV. I love sequential storytelling. I love not sequential, episodic storytelling. It's part of what I love about comics. I love the idea that every segment of the story is a segment with a beginning and end, and they all come together to make a larger thing. And I love seeing something in a movie or a TV show or in a comic or in a novel that makes me go, wait, what? What was that? I'm lost. Or am I lost? Or should I just hang on to that in context? It can be disorienting. I can think of one book. It's a novel. I won't name names, but it's very, very popular. And I didn't like it because when I tried to read the first chapter, nothing was familiar. And I didn't like the writer's prose. And I was like, I feel like I just opened a junk drawer. So it can be disoriented where you're like, nah, I can't grab anything here. It all looks sharp and unwelcoming.
Was it Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, I was like, screw that guy.
Why do all these people look so weird?
Wait, you looked and you found him the cat in the hat? Hold on. What?
Eggs are not green.
I demand it. But I'm just like thinking of other things that do that. I was thinking of there's this book series called Luna that like I thought it was a sci-fi novel that did it really, really well, where like the first chapter starts with like a race, but like as they're describing this like foot race and like the teenager's like thoughts in his head during this foot race, you realize all these crazy things, like the foot race is taking place on the moon. And like it's apparently like a huge like ritualistic deal for these people and not just a foot race. And like it's one of those things where it just like compounds on I really like China Miéville's writing, and I think that he does that too sometimes, where it's like he'll just be like, you're, like I'm thinking of The Last Days of New Paris, which is one of my favorite books of his, and how it's like you're sitting, like a lot of the scenes in it are like it's a guy, he's sitting at a table in Paris, he's drinking a coffee, it's war-torn Paris, the World War II has happened recently, and there's a giant surrealistic monster walking through the street, and it's just like that feeling of like you don't know why yet, but it's not a shock moment to him. To this character, it's normal. It's like, oh, okay, time to hide from that thing like we do every day, and like. To me, there's nothing more interesting than watching a character go about something that's normal to them but disorienting to me. I love that.
Yeah, for sure. That brings me to sort of my last question, and then maybe we will take some questions from the audience if we have time for that. But
for sure.
The thing that really struck me about Phenomenosity, the thing that made it feel personal and I sort of was intrigued by, was the phenomenon, the way you talk about it. I'm like, oh, this is exciting. What is this? And it's glowing creature, lights in the sky. And then you go into the fact that nobody knows what it is. Like they're researching it and they've been looking into it, and it's still, all this time has passed. They built a city below it, and still it's just like, we don't know what it is. And that's how you have to sort of make peace with that. And I was thinking about when I went to Iceland, which I've talked about before, being a really magical place, and seeing the Northern Lights. And I guess I understand what the Northern Lights are scientifically to a sense, but there was this sense of wonder at this magical thing. And like, I remember staring at it and like it just feels otherworldly. It feels surreal and like not of this planet. And I just remember being like, I wish I didn't know what this was. I wish I was a Viking. I wish I could just be like, no one's figured this one out. And just a phenomena. Like, I wish I could experience it like that, where people just be like, we don't know what it is. It happens sometimes. We don't know when, we don't know why. Here it is. And I love that. And getting sucked into that in your book, like, was very much wish fulfillment for me. But then you have this character who is seeking knowledge, and not the knowledge of the phenomena, but like seeking knowledge in the same place. And so just from a sort of personal standpoint, like, I feel like you sold the idea of it being okay with not knowing what something is, and being at peace with not understanding everything, but also have a protagonist who is seeking knowledge. And like, where do you lie on that? Where does which is you? Which is your perspective?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So there's a lot of points to this, right? Point the first. I hate when horror movies explain themselves badly.
Sure.
Like, I love when I'm watching a horror movie and I'm totally scared and wrapped up in it, and I hate when they over-explain it. Like, when they're like, really good example of this is, I think the first half of the movie Insidious is some really good filmmaking. And then it gets weird. That lady comes in with those two Ghostbusters and the whole movie turns into a Rob Zombie video, and it sucks. Like, it sucks. I'm sorry. We could do a whole hour on how I don't like James Wan movies. But
James Wan's in the chat right now, unfortunately.
Hi, James.
He said,
Love you.
he said, did you see Malignant? It was a little bit different than my usual thing.
I didn't, and I've heard that. I heard I should go see Malignant. It's actually good. So I don't like when things explain themselves. Usually I'm like, I would rather it be unexplained. But in the real world, I'm like weirdly not like that, right? Like, I am an absolute, like, podcasts about people who have disappeared, things who are unexplained, cases that were never solved, cases that make no sense, like somebody walked into a building, there are no cameras, no exits, but they disappeared, like, and people just spend years taking it apart. I love that stuff. But I kind of love that people don't know. Like, for me, there's kind of a magic in the era of being brought together by not understanding. And that's the kind of magic of the city, right? It's like we are brought together because we all know together that we don't know the truth. And then people start forming factions about what they believe the truth to be. And does that kind of pollute the message or not? Or does it keep it ideologically pure? I was raised Catholic. I no longer practice the Catholic faith, but I still really am interested in like the history of it. Like, I have like a daily saint book I read every day. That's like an old, like, just because I got it like a while ago, and I just thought it was cool because it's a different saint every day of the year, and I hadn't read it ever, so I've just been going through over the year and being like, what's today's saint? My birthday was wrapped around the Archangel. I got a good one. I was like, oh shit, I got Magneto. Like,
you got to learn all the lore, all the characters.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I love how it's like kind of the same feeling, right? I'm like, there's all these weird, or like, half of them, it's like, oh, he was a nobleman. I'm like, noble my ass. Like, you shouldn't. But then it's like some 14-year-old virgin like fought a bunch of Roman legions and died, but is a saint now. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool like that. So I love that idea. And so I was really inspired by also, like, in addition to things that I sent Phil a bunch of stuff like ball lightning and the northern lights and other atmospheric phenomena that are explained but are still pretty weird. I then also sent a bunch of things like the appearance Fatima and Our Lady of Guadalupe and all of these, like, what people had described. Like, I found like YouTube videos of people recreating like what they think the appearance at Fatima would have looked like for like the children there that like, or when people saw like the dancing of the sun, like all of these religious things that were supposed to have happened over history. I went back and found like YouTube videos of people being like, well, based on what they explained, based on what people said they saw, here's what that supernova that people saw in China in the 9th or 11th century or whatever should have looked like. It was fun. And so I just kind of found this fusion between like my own fascination with not understanding things and then like just the magic in general of not knowing. And like, I don't know, I think for all of my like talk and everything about like, gassing myself up, like I'm a very humble person. And I think it's like a virtue. I think the reason to be humble is not to let people step on you, but it's to admit you don't know things. It's to admit ignorance and to constantly be letting the world like teach you and change you. So.
Right. That was a good answer, Tina.
That is a good answer.
That's a good
We
answer.
do have a handful of audience questions. I've also got a quick one, if that's okay with you, Matt. Do you approve of that?
You should have sent it to me beforehand, but it's too late now. Just go.
All right, yeah. I'll screen the next one. Tini, there's something about your character stuff that I feel like it rings very, very genuine to me. Like Assassinistas is one of my favorite indie comics ever, and that book is like really, yeah, of course. And that it's like a very special book to me, and it feels very like the emotionality of that book really struck me, and I felt that reading this new book as well. And I wanted to ask you, like, the emotional stuff with your characters, are you the kind of writer that pulls a lot of stuff from your personal experience and it's sort of masked in the book? Like a lot of it you could point to it and go like, yeah, that's basically something that I've been through. Or are you just really good at emulating other people's experiences? Because it all feels so personal. So that's something I've wondered for a while.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. Well, thank you. And like in Assassinistas, for example, right? Like, I'm limited by my own experience in some pretty obvious ways. For example, none of the main characters is a white woman.
Yeah, sure.
But like, I am always pulling from genuine. The feeling is always genuine, even when the experience, like it's, and I have always been like a little, I don't know, for lack of better words, I've always been like a little writer in my head where everything from like, I'll think about what should have happened after a movie. There's like a book my mom has when I was like 8 years old where I wrote like for a class assignment, wrote Super Mario fan fiction about me getting sucked in and going to Super Mario.
Hell yeah.
You're gonna put that in the afterwards. We can put that on chat.
Upload the PDF. I'll get mom to send it.
Oh my God.
No. She can send it.
Substack.
I know she might actually send it to me if I ask. But so I've always been, I don't know, and like, I guess I've always been a really, really emotional person. When I was a kid, I was a total I used to get called crybaby. I've always just been effusive and I feel things deeply. I'm a goth kid, right?
Yeah, sure.
And as a kid, like, when I got to kind of learning that like not everyone was super uncomfortable with that display of emotion, which was a lesson I needed to learn. I got really into like taking those strong emotions I felt and often putting them in like books I was reading or stories I was writing or things I was drawing or playing dress up to become a character that had meaning to me or whatever. And it was just like this feeling that I had to take some way and like get this energy out, get this, like being creative for me is like a thing I have to do. Even when I'm on vacation, I'll doodle, like I'll think about stories. Like I can't not do it. So it's really kind of here that it's very genuine. I've had actually people, it's really funny. I've had people that don't know me and have never met me accuse me of like self-insert over like a bunch of different characters that are all very
really?
And I think it's just because like, to me, I'm always just like, I think it's because I'm just writing genuinely. Like I think sometimes people just feel genuine and think that it's like, well, it must be real. She must be writing like what really happened to her. And I'm usually not. And as a matter of fact, I'm kind of like really private about my personal emotions publicly. I'm not the person that goes like you'll never find a video of me crying into a camera online. I think it's fine if people want to do it, but that's not me. I don't get really personal with strangers, except for the way I get really personal with strangers, which is through fiction writing. And for a character, for someone who's not me, I'll like skin myself and put all my emotions on the page. But when someone's like, okay, Tini, write a Substack about the emotions you've felt in the past year, I'm like, I'd rather write about horror movies I like. I don't want to do that. It's uncomfortable for me. But it means a lot to hear that it's genuine because then it's worth it.
Absolutely. Good answer. Good answers all around. We can do a few audience questions before we let you go.
I got time.
And by let you go, I mean record the other segment.
Yeah, there's more. I think after that kind of profound, inquiry from Ethan, we have one from a fan, Tyler Boiz says, Miss Howard, would you rather have a dog with human hands or a cat with a human face?
Good question, Tyler Boiz.
Cat, hands down. I'm not really a dog person.
But
it has a human
with a human face. It's very upsetting.
Whose face is it? Do I get to pick? Or is
it's the cat's face?
It's
the cat's face, but it's like a human version of it.
Oh, wait, okay, hold on.
They're both so bad.
Let's be real.
Pick. Who is it? Whose face is on your monster cat?
That's a good question.
It's yours.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's a cute cat. That's a good cat. That's an
he has little glasses, and I feed him a dish of chocolate milk. Also,
dead.
Oh, Tyler, your icon. I love that picture. But yeah, also a dog with human hands just sounds like trouble. Like giving anything human hands, like is asking for
what's it gonna do with them? I don't want to know.
I don't want a dog that can fire a gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely want a dog that can fire a gun. That's
gun dog.
Matt, didn't you say you don't like cats?
Don't like them. Do not
That's
like
funny
them.
because you do have like a cat energy a little bit.
There's a cat also.
Wow, you guys are really swinging on me this week. I'm a gap-loving cat guy.
not a cat owner energy, like a cat energy in yourself.
I am a cat.
You
just a little
are
bit.
one. Yeah.
I don't like cats. When I was a kid, my grandmother had a cat, and when I would go stay at my grandmother's house, I'd be in bed at night, and it would sneak into the bed through the bottom of the bed under the covers, and so I would just see this like lump coming towards my body and my crotch, and I knew what it was. I was a little kid, but I was still like, that's the cat. You can't just kick it, but like every instinct of your body is like, there's a lump moving towards you in your bed, kick it. And that to me informed cats for me entirely. And then later I was just like, they're just kind of rude dudes who live in your house and shit in a box.
Rude dudes.
Rude dudes.
Dogs are cute when
need to-
they're other people's, but I don't see. Wait, this is what I mean. You're gonna say we don't talk about dogs, but this is the problem, because if you don't like cats, you can talk all day about how acceptable it is to not like cats. But if I'm like, I'm not really a dog person, people are
It's
like,
not good.
People
like,
I've heard people say
I
you're a
don't-
sociopath if you don't like dogs. It's just like, oh my god, yeah.
I'm like, look, they're fine. I think other people's dogs are wonderful. I will play with your dog.
Yeah.
I will pet your dog. But what I don't want to be doing is getting up in the middle of the night to let something that weighs half as much as I do outside to piss and shit. No, thank you.
That's fair.
They make a lot of noise.
But imagine if they had hands, then they could let themselves
Let
out.
themselves out, and then come back and scratch your back for you, give you a massage.
That's cute.
Yeah, I don't like
Massage dog.
The massage parts.
I'm worried their hands would smell like dog. Like, I don't like the dog smell, and I feel like their hands would still have that dog smell. Then they rub my back, and I would have the dog smell in my bed, and I would have the
It's
dog
a
smell.
bad time.
This is not
Thank you to the dog owners of the world for giving dogs a home so that I can wave to them and pet them and don't have to own them.
That's fair. That's fair.
Here's another question from Miscellaneous Soup. Dear TINI HOWARD, I've been a fan of your work for years. I recently read Magdalena. Is it possible that you could discuss further plans, especially in terms of the shared universe? I hope you have a good day.
Oh, no, man, I loved writing that book. I actually was, when I went to San Diego Comic Con just for the day this year, I stopped by the Top Cow booth with my friend Ryan Cady, who co-wrote that book with me. And we were...
B minus. He's a B minus.
Solid A plus Ryan Cady, and we were hanging out at that booth, and I was just like, definitely, is something that I would love to do when I have time again. Definitely something I've had talks with Top Cow about. I love that character. I love Maya, the Magdalena we got to create. I love getting to create her and have her roll around with patients because I don't know. I have one of my favorite things about writing comics for existing companies is getting to play with the legacy and make. I think legacy characters are cool as hell. I think it's really cool when characters create found families with like the same, little. It's like a knightly order or something, right? We all have our symbol, we all have our thing we believe in, we all fight for it, and I think that's really cool. And so I loved getting to do that with Magdalena and having Patience and Maya, and have them build up a team, and then. I would love to write more of them. Totally. Yeah, it's definitely something I've talked to Top Cow about, and definitely something that when I have time on my schedule again, I would love to. I don't. There are no firm plans, but I definitely would love to write.
Do you have ideas for what you do?
Oh yeah, Ryan and I had like we had like a whole second and third arc planned. Just at the time, sales didn't support it. But I mean. There's definitely stuff that, from our original plans that we would be bringing back. We had some cool plans that we were like, man, kind of bummed we never got to do it, but the seeds are there. So if we go back.
Awesome.
Well, there you go, Miscellaneous Soup.
Miscellaneous Soup had a little existential crisis about.
I noticed
her
that.
asking our questions. He said, I feel dumb. I just realized that I was supposed to put my question in the Substack comments.
No.
My apologies for being annoying. I'm going to leave. I'll come back if I feel like I'm being less obnoxious / not ruining the stream.
No.
Miscellaneous Soup.
No.
Miscellaneous Soup, it's fine. It's
You're-
fine, but don't let it happen again.
No,
Well,
let it happen again. You put your
Come on
comments.
back.
come on back. You put your comments wherever you want your comments.
We check all the channels. You can leave them anywhere you want.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
genuinely, thank you for coming and asking such a cool, respectful, fun question that let me talk about one of my favorite projects. You did a great job, and I was happy to answer it. So thank you. Come on back soon.
Absolutely. We do have another one from Sebastian. Question for TINI, since I can't make it live. Excalibur and Knights of X seemed so heavily rooted in both Marvel and Arthurian lore. Was there a lot of research required for that series? What was that process like? Really enjoyed the whole run. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, I did do a lot of research, but it's also, again, one of those things that I've just had like an interest in my whole life. I'm a history nerd. I'm a fantasy nerd. But as far as things that like, I'll tell you one thing I really, really read and one thing I definitely didn't read. So one thing I definitely read was Bernard Cornwell's Arthurian books. He's definitely like an old stodgy British guy history author, but I love his stuff. And he wrote a bunch of Arthurian books that are basically like, okay, I know the Dark Ages is not a historical term anymore, but they're more or less set during post-Rome Britain, where everything was kind of just a bunch of where it was a bunch of just, Welsh people and British people and Scottish people and people of all Picts and all different backgrounds fighting each other for chunks of England. And he kind of turns the Arthurian legend into like a no magic history. Like, it's kind of like, what if Arthur was just kind of like a British warlord and Merlin was just kind of like shit and Morgan a crazy woman. And it was a really cool look at these people as characters with all their like flaws and stuff. And it really got me thinking about like a version of these people that was working. And another thing I did that was cool was I worked with like Cy Spurrier, who'd written some stuff on Black Knight and had built up some cool stuff with regard to Arthur that he didn't get to continue in Black Knight, but we talked about it and I was like, oh, I think that's sick and I'm going to continue some of that in Excalibur. So we kind of thought to build things up together. Sometimes in comics it doesn't happen. One book continues, one book doesn't, whatever, and you kind of like are able to take those pieces. One thing I definitely didn't read, and it's not because I didn't want to, but I did not, and I have not read yet. I probably will not, but I have not read Kieran Gillen's Once and Future with Dan Mora because Kieran's my good friend and we have similar story instincts. Sometimes when I told Kieran this in his podcast, I was like, I can't read it. Like, it's just too. I know I will. Like, I was like, Kieran, your work inspires me already. Like, I read so much, like Phonogram and Wictive when I was like working at a comic shop that I'm if I read your take on Arthur, it will like, I will unintentionally ape you, So I definitely did not read Once and Future, and I haven't still because I was afraid to get too close.
It's quite good. I think
we
that's
one.
We have one more
before the question. Rachel says, "Happy Scorpio season to TINI and to everyone else."
Oh.
Thank you.
Congrats, all the Scorpios out there. Matt, what's your sign?
What?
What's your sign?
The cat.
Your astrological sign?
What's your birthday?
My sign is a big sign. Says, "Don't ask me that." I'm an Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I love when people don't give a shit about the zodiac and they tell me what they are, and I can go, that makes sense because they don't.
I'm an Aquarius, so that means that I like water.
Okay.
Not even a water sign.
It's an air sign. You'd think it is, but
you absolutely.
Here's a question from Victor Fuentes. Why is the Gothamverse attractive for writers, aside from the large group of readers? Why do you guys like writing stuff for all those characters?
I love Gotham City. Okay, my earliest memory of being obsessed with Gotham City is Batman Returns. I also remember the cartoon. I watched the shit out of it. And it's just so gothic. I'm a goth girl. I even love the like Batman Forever version of Gotham. Like that movie.
That's so good. It's so
like,
good.
Like to me, that version of Gotham is the closest to the like Grant Morrison era, like necrodelic, like neon lights, and the Flamingo showing up, and Dick being Batman. That's my favorite stuff. So I really love Gotham when it's kind of like not just goth, but kind of also like neon and weird. And I like just building out different parts of it. Like in Catwoman, we've built this kind of building called the Trixie in this high street, which is basically like where, you go if you're like a if you're wealthy and you don't like broke shit, but you're maybe not on the level, you know, you can hang out there and you can put your guma up in the Trixie building where Catwoman lives, and you don't know she lives there. And like in Punchline, we're like messing with parts of Alleytown where it's like grimy and it feels like, you know, places where Blake and I have been and lived, where we've lived, you know, the East Coast, or places like Hollywood where it's like bright and colorful, but like scary in places. And some of those places are also really the fun parts. And like, so yeah, I mean, Gotham is, I love cities. And I've always loved Gotham. I think it's just like the city itself is attractive for me, not just the characters, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as a fellow Gotham writer, I love a realized world, and like Tini said, like where the city's a character. But I think that like so much of what is important to me about superheroes is like how they interact with the world and how the world interacts with them and how those things inform each other. And like I grew up in New York, and so like I really believed in the Stan Lee, you know, Marvel is the world outside your window. And like it's amazing when I see New York as a character in a Marvel book that's more than just like, this is Times Square, this is the Statue of Liberty. And I always tried to do that and be like, oh, you know, this is you know, like we get to see these heroes on the subway, we get to see them, you know, down at Battery Park, we get to see them in the Bronx. It's not just like whatever. But for Gotham, it's like that, except you can create all this stuff that is like absurd and crazy. And it's like, it's sort of, it's New York City. I mean, I know people will be like, it's Chicago, it's whatever. It's New York City to me. And, you know, it's New York City on speed and psychedelics and horrible drugs, and like on a, you know, it has a shiny part that is fun to dip your toe into, but the underbelly of Gotham is so fun and exciting. And like, it's this magical world that feels not that different than ours. Like it feels relatable. We understand what it is, but it also is this world that has created Penguins and Riddlers and Jokers and Catwomen and Batman, and just like I love thinking about like how that there's a certain type of beautiful magic in the same way that like an Arthurian legend has like magic infused in classic things. Like it's a modern magic that I think is so fascinating and fun, and we don't get to play with a lot in other forms of fiction.
Yeah, it's always exciting to feel like you can do that. Like there's a reason why Gotham writers are always like, we always want to take like to make something up and put something in that's like a nod or a reference. Like we can't help it. Like the restaurant on the bottom floor of Catwoman's building is called Capolo's Meat Market, and it's like an Italian place. Like it's just awesome. Something you do. You have to put something into Gotham and say, you know, and hopefully someday someone will make a dumb reference to me in a Catwoman book, but you know, when they do, I'll be here to do that for others. But it is exciting. Like I remember when I was writing Skeptics, it took place in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm from and where my grandfather, you know, worked in the 60s and all that. So like that city and that era is really important to me. And I remember being really excited because I was like, I want to include Ben's Chili Bowl, which is like a famous DC black-owned chili dog place that's been there forever. And I wasn't sure if like it had been there that, you know, at that time. And I looked it up, and like not only had it been there at the time, it famously like brought hot dogs and served like hot dogs and chili to people that would go to like MLK rallies and stuff. Because it's like one place where they could be like, everyone can come back here, like we'll serve everyone. So I was like, that's so cool. Like I got to put this piece of my history into this comic. I'd never seen it in a comic before. I'd never seen anyone do a comic in DC in the 60s and put Ben's Chili Bowl in it. But it was just like, it's one of those fun ways to be like, yeah, I can like immortalize this thing I care about. And,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Matt, you ready to get out of here?
I'm ready to go. This has been lovely. Okay. It couldn't be better. So I think that you leave on a high note.
Absolutely.
I fixed your live experiment mess.
Good work.
Well, before I think to wrap it up, I just wanted to point out Mountain Lion, very real. Very just what
maximum taste, it says.
Store brand. Maximum taste.
Tini's doing a dab in honor of Mountain Lion.
In my research, I came across something I would see if Tini's got any answers for me about this one. Is the Hannaford brand equivalent of Dr. Pepper, which is known as Dr. Perky.
Dr. Perky.
Which
I've seen Dr. Perky.
Smooth flavor. I just want to know where was the, you know, what's this about? Dr. Perky. What marketing like fucking group came together and said, which words are going to get the most amount of folks to buy our Dr. Pepper equivalent. And
I mean,
so
we're
there's,
ones to talk.
Do you guys know what Food Lion is
Yes.
famous for on the East Coast?
What they're famous
no,
for?
no.
Selling rotted meat. That's what they're famous for.
Oh no!
Everyone I know calls it either Food Dog or the Shitty Kitty. Uh,
Whoops.
so I'm sorry if you're a loyal Food Lion
I
fan
think
and
we're
a listener. If we're
losing our
absolutely
sponsorship.
losing Food Lion,
Yeah, this episode brought to you by Food
Food
Lion.
Lion.
you can't trust anything that goes on at a Food Lion to follow like logic or.
I would just point out that I think like when I think of a drink, and I know that I'm part of a Dr. Pepper family, Dr. Pepper loyalists, so like I'm not
like
speaking
Dr.
ill,
Pepper.
but like Dr. Pepper to me, the name, it doesn't sound like it. Like I don't want a drink that's peppery,
No, it sounds
but
bad.
Perky, Dr. Perky, like that sounds
Dr.
great.
Perky is more fun. Yeah.
That sounds
I don't
great.
know,
I would-
Ethan. Are we making a switch? Are we the Perky Boys? We could be the Perky
Ooh,
Boys.
we could be the Perky Boys. Yeah.
done. It's done.
That's not bad.
Put it
Well,
in right.
Go to
If you're the person,
Lion's on.
you might get a doctorate too out of it. So.
Oh, hey.
Dr. Perky Boys.
Do you think Dr. Pepper ever got his honorary doctorate? Do you think
Yeah,
they would have
he got it
given
at the
that
same
to him?
time
I
Gaiman
think
did.
was he not a real doctor?
There's no way he was a real doctor.
I think he was like I thought it was like at a pharmacy, and he was like mixing drinks at like a soda fountain pharmacy, and he was I don't fucking know.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about
Google it at
next
home.
time.
Is
That's
there
your
something to the fact that like doctors at one like is this go back to the putting cocaine and soda joke from
I think
earlier?
it does.
Are we all the way back to putting
I
cocaine
think
and
it
soda?
does. I think it does. I mean, I think it's not a joke though, right? Like Dr. Pepper was medicinal. That's what like you're supposed to take it at certain times in the day to keep yourself regular.
Supposed to drink it hot also,
Yes, that's true.
which
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. I don't want to do
that's
that.
what
next
time. That's what I'll have in the mug.
we're gonna all have a hot Dr.
Hot
Pepper
Dr. Pepper.
next live episode. We're all gonna have it, and it's gonna.
I'll try it, but I don't
That's
know.
what having it is. Trying it.
Anyway, go to foodlion.com, use our promo code SLARRY.
Did you say? Sorry. That's
5%
foodlion.com/ideas don't get diarrhea, but maybe you will. Sorry about it.
Jesus. And on that wonderful note, I think we're done here.
I think we're done. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you, Tini, for being here. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our discussion with TINI HOWARD. Make sure to check out PHENOMENOCITY as well as everything else Tini's working on by visiting her Substack, The Scorpio Room, at tinihoward.substack.com. To get the latest episodes of this podcast, as well as news, giveaways, and even comics delivered straight to your inbox, go to ashcanpress.com and sign up for the newsletter. We'll be back next week with another wonderful guest. And in the meantime, you can write to us at ideasdon'tbleedpod@gmail.com or tweet to Matthew Rosenberg at ashcanpress on Twitter, me at Tales to Astonish, or Griffin at Griff Sheridan. We'll include some of your correspondence on the show, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And big thanks to Summer People for our theme song, Where's the Poison? Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.